Good morning, good morning. This is your favorite half Chinese with another morning rant. Behind me is those animal farm for children with donkeys and cows and chicken and Bambi. I don't know how, deers, right? Whatever. Anyway, I wanted to talk about something. A lot of people in my comment section now are starting to reject democracy because they see that where they live, it's so-called democracy, and they see it's failing. Therefore, they don't want to have a democracy anymore. It's a very, very dangerous predicament because it is not true. It has nothing to do with democracy. It has all to do with the lack of democracy. That's a real one. That's not my sound that I always put in. I don't know if you heard that, but that was that rooster that was making that sound. A real one. Anyway, the thing is, when you live in a capitalist society, you cannot have a democracy. The two do not coexist. So every time I made a video about democracy in the United States, why there is none, go and watch it. I also made a video about the Netherlands in Dutch, why it is not a democratic system, why we do not have democracy. You can also go and watch that because the two systems are somewhat equal but also a little bit different in certain ways. And this way you can find the way in your own system and get that framework to analyze whether it is a democracy, yes or no, right? Because obviously it very much looks like a democracy. We can vote and everything, right? But in essence, we have really nothing to say. And the reason for that is because we live in a capitalist society, and a capitalist society is based upon capital. It's not based upon people, right? It is an economic theory which is solely based upon capital. And as opposing of that, you have socialism, which is also a economic theory, but it's based through the lens of social practices, right? It's for the people. It's not only about capital. It needs to have value for the people, right? So in short, yes, in capitalism it needs to have value. It just needs to raise capital. In socialism, it needs to be valuable to the people, right? So everybody can enjoy the fruits of whatever it is in their economic system that they're doing. Look at Bambi over there behind me. That's great, right? Do not feed the animals, right? So why is it that in a capitalist society we cannot have a democracy? Well, that's quite simple to explain, and the United States is a very good example because it's so out in the open. We have the same in the Netherlands, but it is not so out in the open. Everybody has heard of the lobbies in the United States. They are actually corrupting the government. And how do they corrupt the government? With money that they make through capitalism. So in capitalism, all the means of production are being concentrated into the hands of private ownership. And once you have private ownership, they start to monopolize entire markets. And when that happens, you get also the power which will be going up to the top, to a very small percentage of people. It varies from 3% to maybe 5%, that's max, but not more than that of all the people. In normal language we always say it's the 1%, right? So they gain so much power because they own the means of production. They can dictate to the country what they should or should not do. And that is actually what's happening. And not only that, but if they have all these financial institutions, the resources in their hands, you as a normal person do not have a chance anymore unless they are allowing you, right? If they don't allow you, then you cannot do anything. So that means that there is no real democracy. The distribution of the wealth should be changing to have a real democracy, right? Everybody should be able to have the same opportunities and have the same chances. You should not have resources of a nation should not be privatized and have your people pay for it. It should be nationalized and given to the people for a very reducible price so they can afford it, right? Because when something is from a country, what makes a country? A country is being made by the people, right? So the resources should belong to the people. That's why the resources should be guarded by the state. If it is guarded by the state, then the state can say, well, we need, of course, a little bit money for it because we need to extract the resources, but we do not need to make a high profit margin because, you know, it's for the people. These are the resources of the people. When you do that, then you can now understand this is exactly what China is doing. Then you can understand why China almost doesn't have inflation. In fact, it has deflation right now. Well, now you can also understand why we have such a high inflation and why we are paying so much for our utilities, because it is normal if I have a company that is extracting gas, and there's another one here also in the Netherlands, then we would raise the prices to keep our margins high. And we both would do it, and we would not be fighting against each other if we are just with the 2 or 3. And that is one of those reasons. And we can do that because when we are having capital, then we can monopolize. And we create capital by making everything extra expensive, unfairly expensive. And that is basically it. And that is why we can never ever have democracy under capitalism. It's always, the power will always be with a few and not with the masses. And that is something that we need to start to recognize and change the system. And again, I'm not saying that you need to have socialism, but everybody heard about socialism, so I just use it as an example. I think you need to figure out a system which is okay for your own country, which, you know, every country has its own people with their own culture, and based upon their culture you create a system which will benefit the people, not only the 1%. Anyway, that was my short morning rant. I just wanted to talk about it, and that is why a lot of people also make this mistake. What I also see, and they say, yes, we want to have communism, or they say, oh, we live under communism, referring to because they're losing their freedoms, which is also actually false, because under communism you actually have total freedom. That's the whole idea behind it, right? In the past, before everything was divided and everything, that was a real communism actually, right? But there also wasn't a state at that time, so everybody lived in small communities and everybody was helping each other to, as a community, thrive. And that's just freedom, right? You can choose whatever. There's no nothing that no laws of a group of people that already passed away. Like we in the West, we have laws from times like maybe 1700 or whatever, right? Dude, it's 2025 now, right? It's ridiculous to have laws of 1700. Let's be honest here. But anyway, That is why we will never have democracy under capitalism. And as you can understand, it is because of that in socialism there is democracy. This is what a lot of people don't understand about communism or socialism. It is actually that the power is being given back to the people. That has always been the case. Although in the media they portray it differently, and you can understand why now, because it would wake up all the people in the capitalist societies, and they would say, why don't we have that, right? So don't be afraid of democracy, be afraid of capitalism. That's what you really should be afraid of. If you want to have democracy, you should be abolishing capitalism at all cost. And all these people that have been exploiting others, you know, just take their money and redistribute it to the people that they had been exploiting to gain all that money that they have, right? And I think that's the correct way to do it. And I think we should start to think about these kind of things. So yeah, that was actually my morning rant for this morning. I did 2 in a row because that means I can one morning do not have to do it and I can do something else. So let me all know what you think of this in the comment section, but please keep it respectful. Do you still think that under capitalism you would be able to have capitalism, yes or no? And do you still think that under socialism there is no democracy, right? If you want to know more about the system in China, let me know in the comment section. We can do a morning rant about it. Maybe we can do a little bit about how it was before, right? Because in order to see if something is successful, we need to know the entire history. If we don't know the entire history, and this is also the mistake in our education system, which is, in my opinion, put in place directly because of that, because they don't want us to know. You cannot think about things as isolated, right? You cannot think like, oh, for example, we always talk bad about China. We cannot say, okay, China doesn't, for Americans, China doesn't allow us to carry guns in China, therefore it is not a free country, right? You have to understand the reasoning behind it, right? For example, I am always against the death penalty. However, I do realize, I do understand the death penalty in China when it comes to drug offenses. I totally understand that. Because I understand that history behind it, right? They've seen the destruction that it caused to their nation, and they said never again. And I also understand, you know, why Americans are doing it, although I cannot agree with that, right? I do not understand, like, why Americans put a murderer in, give them the death penalty, but somebody who is bringing in tons and tons of illegal substances is just getting a couple of years, because they say it is a non-violent crime. But when we look at how many crimes are being committed, violent crimes, by people under influence or because of, you know, these illegal substances, just think of rip deals, etc., debts that need to be collected, and so on. Then we soon see that when you are dealing in that kind of stuff, that's not really non-violent. It's extremely violent. So why not punish them accordingly, right? Because if you have somebody who took somebody else's life and you give them a death penalty, but somebody else who destroyed and possibly maybe because of a OD or something, many people lose their life. You just give them a couple of years. It doesn't make any sense. And then you are starting to blame another nation for your opioid problem. It doesn't sound really fair, right? Anyway, maybe that's something for another video too, for another morning rant. I hope you now understand a little bit that it is not the problem of democracy, it is the problem of our capitalism and neoliberal society. So let me know what you all think of this in the comment section. Please like, share, and if you have not yet, then follow. And you know, I wish you all a great day. This was your favorite half Chinese.